This is what airport surveillance cameras caught. Faizon Love grabbing the valet, throwing him to the ground, throwing him into the desk, and then back to the ground.
Somebody lost their cool and somebody got taught a lesson.
But I don't understand the other. Can y'all help me? When has being nasty been a federal crime?
Faizon Love has made headlines for more than just comedy. With violent outbursts, lawsuits, and his vocal defense of Diddy amid serious allegations, fans are rethinking everything. While nothing's been proven in court, the growing pile of controversies is shifting Love's image from funny to deeply disturbing.
You had a tweet where you said, "Man, I fold the hands for your support. Bro, are you ready to light a flame that'll get someone hurt? I'm 52, I've been fighting for 40 years. Guns, bricks, sticks, knock dudes out, been knocked out, charged for attempted murder."
This exposé dives into the allegations, lawsuits, and online backlash that might just mark the end of Faizon Love's career as we know it. This particular controversy dates back to a heated night in 2009 at the Standard Hotel in West Hollywood, a hotspot known for celebrity sightings and exclusive entry. According to law enforcement reports, Faizon Love became enraged after being denied entry to the hotel's upscale nightclub area. Eyewitnesses say the comedian, visibly intoxicated and loud, confronted security before turning his attention to another guest standing nearby. Without warning, Love allegedly struck the man in the face with a closed fist, knocking him to the ground. The victim reportedly suffered significant head injuries, prompting an immediate response from hotel staff and local police. Love was arrested on the scene and booked on felony assault charges. His bail was set at $30,000, a figure that underscored how serious authorities were taking the incident. If convicted, Love faced up to 4 years in prison under California law. TMZ released footage shortly after the incident, showing Faizon being led away by police, his shirt slightly disheveled, and his demeanor tense. Security personnel can be seen trying to de-escalate the situation, as bystanders watched in disbelief. For fans, the news came as a surprise, but for some insiders in the industry, the whispers started almost immediately. This wasn't an isolated event. People close to the scene began describing it as a red flag, hinting that Faizon's public persona might be hiding a darker, more volatile private life. Fast forward to April 2011 in Seattle, Washington. Faizon Love was arrested once again, this time on suspicion of fourth-degree domestic violence, a misdemeanor under Washington state law, but still a serious charge. According to police records, the incident occurred inside a private residence where officers were called after a domestic disturbance. When they arrived, Faizon was identified as the aggressor in what was described as a physical altercation with a woman whose identity was not released to the public. What raised eyebrows even more was that Love was held without bail for over 24 hours, an unusual move for a fourth-degree assault case. Legal analysts speculated that Love may have still been under probation from his 2009 assault charge, which could explain why authorities took a stricter stance. The court documents didn't provide many public details, but insiders say the no-bail decision indicated deeper concerns about his behavior and potential flight risk. As a result, Love missed a scheduled comedy performance in Seattle that weekend, leaving fans confused and disappointed. Local radio stations briefly covered the arrest, but the story quickly disappeared from national headlines, buried under newer celebrity scandals. Still, those who had been following Love's legal troubles noticed a disturbing trend. With a second violent incident just 2 years after the West Hollywood assault, it became harder to brush off his behavior as isolated. A growing number of fans and critics alike began to wonder if Faizon Love's temper was spiraling out of control.
Faizon Love grabbing the valet, throwing him to the ground, throwing him into the desk, and then back to the ground.
By March 2017, Faizon Love's violent outbursts had escalated, and this time, there was no denying what happened. The entire incident was caught on surveillance footage at John Glenn Columbus International Airport in Ohio. According to police reports and the viral video that followed, Love had just arrived at the airport and gotten into a heated argument with a valet over what witnesses described as a minor parking dispute. Within seconds, the confrontation turned physical. The footage, released by authorities, shows Faizon grabbing the valet by the neck with both hands, violently slamming him against a baggage claim counter, and then forcefully throwing him to the ground. The attack was so sudden and aggressive that nearby travelers could be seen backing away in shock. The valet, whose identity was later revealed in civil court filings, suffered minor injuries but was left shaken and traumatized. Faizon Love was arrested at the scene and charged with misdemeanor assault. In court, he pled no contest, meaning he accepted the penalty without formally admitting guilt. The judge handed him a suspended 180-day jail sentence, a $500 fine, and mandatory court fees. But that wasn't the end of it. The victim filed a civil lawsuit shortly after, seeking compensation for emotional distress and injuries. The case was settled out of court, with Love agreeing to pay $40,000 in damages plus legal expenses. The video spread like wildfire across social media, picked up by outlets like TMZ and NBC4i. Even some of Love's longtime fans turned on him. Reddit threads exploded with commentary. One post that gained traction read, "This man needs anger management. He's out of control." Others pointed out that this marked the third violent incident involving Love in less than a decade, enough, they argued, to establish a pattern of unchecked aggression. In early 2024, as Sean "Diddy" Combs became the center of multiple lawsuits and federal investigations involving deeply troubling allegations, a surprising defender emerged: comedian Faizon Love. While much of the entertainment industry either distanced itself from the hip-hop mogul or stayed silent, Love took a very different approach. In a series of podcast appearances, social media rants, and radio interviews, he openly mocked the nature of the accusations and ridiculed the public outrage surrounding them.
But I don't understand the other. Can y'all help me? When has being nasty been a federal crime?
In one now viral podcast clip, Love sarcastically asked, "When has being nasty been a federal crime?" A pointed jab at the way media outlets and federal authorities were portraying the case. He made light of specific details reported during the raids on Diddy's properties, especially the claim that law enforcement had allegedly discovered over 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Laughing, Love joked, "I didn't know there was a limit on baby oil," as the host chuckled along. But while Faizon's comments may have been meant as humor, many felt he had crossed a line. Online reaction was swift and harsh. Hashtags like #CancelFaizon and #VictimsMatter began trending on X, formerly Twitter. One user posted, "He's out here cracking jokes while people are talking about trauma. That's not comedy, it's cruelty." Others accused him of using comedy to minimize deeply serious allegations, especially given the gravity of the lawsuits Diddy was facing. Though some of Love's fans defended his right to speak freely, the overwhelming sentiment online was that he had chosen the wrong moment and the wrong person to defend. For many, Faizon's statements weren't just controversial. They were damaging, and they raised questions about why he was so eager to protect someone under such a dark cloud of accusations.
I'm confused. The CASSIE thing, I understand. I think you should definitely lock this.
Interestingly, Faizon Love wasn't entirely one-sided in his defense of Diddy. When the lawsuit filed by singer and model CASSIE Ventura came to public attention, one that alleged years of physical, emotional, and psychological abuse at the hands of Diddy, Love's tone shifted, albeit subtly. During an appearance on a podcast in late 2023, shortly after the CASSIE case made headlines, Faizon acknowledged the seriousness of the claims. "If he put his hands on that young lady," Love said, pausing for emphasis, "then he deserves whatever's coming." It was one of the few moments where Faizon appeared to draw a moral line. But even in that statement, critics noticed the hesitation. There was no outright condemnation, just a conditional acknowledgement that, if the allegations were true, consequences were appropriate. This lukewarm stance sparked its own wave of backlash. Online discussions exploded, with many accusing Faizon of playing both sides to protect himself. One highly upvoted Reddit post read, "He's picking what he thinks is safe to condemn. That doesn't make him noble, it makes him strategic." Others pointed out that while Faizon was quick to joke about other lawsuits and defend Diddy broadly, his response to CASSIE's serious claims felt more like damage control than genuine concern. Analysts and fans alike questioned whether Faizon's so-called balance was really just a performance meant to protect his own reputation while still staying in Diddy's good graces. In trying to appear reasonable, some argued he only looked more calculated and less sincere. Back in 2020, Faizon Love found himself at the center of controversy once again, but this time he wasn't the one being accused. Instead, he was the one filing the complaint. Love launched a high-profile lawsuit against Universal Pictures, claiming the studio engaged in racial discrimination by removing him and fellow Black Kaylee Hawk from the international promotional posters for the 2009 comedy couples retreat. While both appeared prominently on the US version of the poster, their images were entirely erased from versions distributed overseas.
It's basically just, to put it evenly and clearly, it's just racist. And this is probably the only time I've ever experienced racism.
Love argued that the decision to edit out the two Black cast members was a blatant act of whitewashing, done to appeal to non-Black international markets. The lawsuit reignited long-standing discussions about Hollywood's history of sidelining Black talent for global marketability. In interviews, Faizon said he had remained quiet for years, but decided to speak out in the wake of the industry's louder calls for diversity and inclusion. Despite the gravity of the claim, the case didn't reach a courtroom conclusion. Love ultimately withdrew the lawsuit, reportedly after behind-the-scenes conversations with Universal representatives. No public settlement was disclosed, and Universal did not admit wrongdoing. Still, the conversation around the issue didn't end. Online forums like Reddit and Twitter continued to debate the matter. Some fans praised Faizon for standing up against racial erasure, saying it took courage to challenge a major studio. But others weren't convinced of his motives. This guy sues when he's excluded and jokes when others are abused. One Redditor posted, "It's all about him." Critics argued that Love's history of inconsistent outrage made it difficult to see the lawsuit as a principled stand. To them, it looked less like a civil rights issue and more like a personal vendetta, a pattern they claimed ran through much of his public persona. In 2016, a disturbing and highly specific lawsuit surfaced against Faizon Love, this time from his former personal assistant, Tashiana Luke. According to detailed court filings, Luke had been hired to work for Love in June of that year, but within just 17 days of employment, from June 9th to June 26th, she claimed to have experienced what she described as a hostile and sexually charged work environment. Luke alleged that during her short tenure, Faizon Love repeatedly made inappropriate sexual remarks toward her. One particularly shocking accusation stood out. She claimed that Faizon sent her a sexually explicit video of himself receiving oral sex. The message attached to the video allegedly read, "What do you think?" According to her lawsuit, this wasn't just a single misstep. It was part of a broader pattern of unprofessional and sexually aggressive behavior. Luke filed a lawsuit for sexual harassment and hostile work environment, seeking damages and legal action. Though the case caught brief media attention with outlets like TMZ and Vlad TV picking up the story, it didn't explode in the way some of Faizon's other controversies did. There was no large-scale public fallout, no formal apology, and no record of a court resolution that found Faizon liable. But while the mainstream media may have let the story slip into obscurity, online communities most certainly did not. On forums and podcasts, especially in hindsight as more allegations surfaced, this lawsuit resurfaced as a red flag. One podcast host summed up the general sentiment. You don't send your employee a P video. That's not even borderline. It's straight up predatory. Reddit threads revisiting the case described it as one of the clearest examples of abuse of power, particularly given the employment dynamic between Love and Luke. Though Faizon never publicly addressed the lawsuit in detail and no criminal charges were filed, many fans and critics alike saw this incident as one more piece in a troubling puzzle, another moment where Love's behavior behind the scenes clashed with his image as a loud, comedic public figure.
Actor Faizon Love pleaded not guilty at a San Diego County court on Tuesday for an assault with a deadly weapons charge.
One of the most disturbing and recent allegations against Faizon Love emerged in August 2024 at the Sheraton Mission Valley Hotel in San Diego, California. According to eyewitnesses and official police reports, the incident occurred at the hotel's front desk late in the evening. Love, reportedly frustrated during a dispute over billing or services, became increasingly agitated with hotel staff. Things escalated quickly. In a shocking act of violence, Faizon allegedly reached across the reception counter, ripped a credit card reader out of its mounted position, and hurled it directly at the head of hotel receptionist Elizabeth Renderos. The heavy device struck her with full force, leaving her with a diagnosed concussion and shattered prescription glasses. Emergency medical responders were called to the scene, and Renderos was treated for head trauma and facial injuries. The San Diego Police Department arrested Love shortly after the attack and booked him on felony assault with a deadly weapon charges. Prosecutors treated the incident seriously, citing not only the violent nature of the attack, but also Faizon's long history of aggression. He pleaded not guilty at his arraignment, but the legal troubles only deepened. As of now, an active warrant remains in place due to Faizon's failure to comply with follow-up court procedures. If convicted, he faces up to 7 years in state prison. What shocked many wasn't just the violence, it was Love's dismissive attitude afterward. In a follow-up podcast appearance, when asked about the incident, he brushed it off with a smirk and said, "People are too sensitive these days." That remark instantly went viral, enraging viewers across social media platforms. She got a concussion and broken glasses, and this dude's cracking jokes? Posted one angry user on X, formerly Twitter. Another wrote, "This isn't comedy, it's cowardice." The reaction from the public was swift and harsh. Hashtags like #justice for Elizabeth began trending, and clips of the hotel surveillance footage were reshared in viral montages, criticizing celebrity privilege and unchecked male aggression. For many observers, this wasn't just another Faizon Love incident. It was the final straw. Across platforms like X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, articles, and countless podcast comment sections, the public response to Faizon Love has become increasingly polarized. While some loyal fans continue to stand by him, claiming he's being unfairly targeted due to his outspokenness and refusal to conform to Hollywood expectations, others are fed up. The division has only grown deeper since Faizon began publicly defending Diddy, a move many see as tone-deaf given the gravity of the allegations surrounding the music mogul. Clips from popular interviews, including The Breakfast Club, Vlad TV, and a number of smaller podcasts, have gone viral, showing guests and commentators calling Faizon out directly. They criticize his dismissive attitude, his jokes about disturbing accusations, and his pattern of minimizing victim stories. One guest on a trending podcast episode said bluntly, "He's either willfully ignorant or completely complicit in toxic culture." Even though Faizon Love has not been convicted of any major crime, fans and critics alike are beginning to connect the dots. They point to his string of legal troubles ranging from assault arrests to sexual harassment lawsuits as evidence that this isn't just a media smear campaign. His behavior, both in real life and on the mic, is becoming harder to justify. In short, Even in the absence of a formal conviction, Faizon's history of violent altercations, inappropriate workplace behavior, and tone-deaf public commentary has pushed many to ask how much more needs to surface before accountability catches up with him. One particularly unsettling anecdote surfaced on Reddit in late 2024, adding even more fuel to Faizon Love's growing list of controversies. In a now viral post, a user claimed to have personal ties to Faizon's past relationship. "Faizon kept hitting on my aunt, borderline harassment," the user wrote. "Then he smacked her in front of my dad." The story quickly gained traction, not because it was verified, but because it echoed the same disturbing behavioral patterns already documented in legal filings and public incidents. Though the claim remains unconfirmed and no formal complaint was ever filed, the timing and tone of the story struck a nerve with online audiences. Podcast hosts, reaction channels, and social commentators picked it up almost immediately. In one podcast that later made the rounds on YouTube, a guest broke it down plainly. "You see the legal cases, then you hear these stories. Can all of it be false? Where there's smoke, there's fire." Many listeners agreed. The comment sections lit up with users pointing out how these seemingly random personal accounts align with Faizon's documented history assault charges, a sexual harassment lawsuit, violent outbursts, and now this alleged incident of inappropriate behavior toward a woman in a family setting. Whether or not the Reddit story is ever confirmed, it's the kind of anecdotal evidence that fuels public opinion, especially when it reflects the same troubling tendencies highlighted by police reports and court documents. And in the court of public perception, repeated patterns like this don't need a guilty verdict to stick. They just need to feel familiar. To his credit, Love has consistently argued that the media rushes to judgment. He believes lawsuits should remain private until resolved in court. In his words, it's trial by media every time. But critics say this is a convenient excuse. He wants silence when he's accused, but he's loud when someone else is, said one commentator. As more people distance themselves from Diddy, Love remains one of the few defending him publicly. That raised eyebrows. "It's not confirmed," one fan posted, "but all signs point to Faizon knowing more than he lets on." Some conspiracy theories even link Faizon to Diddy's inner circle. No evidence proves this, but the optics? They're bad. There was a time when Faizon Love was best known for Friday Elf and his raw stand-up, but now he's in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Clips of his old performances still go viral, but now with new comments beneath. "This didn't age well," wrote one user, "knowing what we know now." Whether you think Faizon Love is being unfairly targeted or simply revealing his true self, the facts are clear. There's a lot more going on behind the jokes. With a pattern of violence, lawsuits, and controversial defenses, the question isn't whether he's guilty. It's how long Hollywood will keep ignoring the signs. The internet's already decided, and this time there might not be a punchline.